If you're like many shoppers, you love to find a deal online. Or you shop online because it's so convenient. And you probably know thieves love to go online too, to try to steal shoppers' credit card information. When you're shopping online, you can start protecting your credit card information by investigating the website you're shopping on. Make sure the online retailer lists a real phone number and a physical address. Read the site's privacy policy and search for reviews and ratings of the retailer. You can read more about safe shopping online at STCU's financial education blog. Go to stcumoney.org.
Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business talk show with your host, Ryan McNeese. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we're here in the studio with Lynn Parrish, Deputy Editor of the Spokane Business Journal. Thank you, Lynn, for joining us.
Anytime, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We have lots to talk about. You have a busy schedule because there's a lot going on economically here in the Spokane region. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'd like to talk a little bit about construction today. We have our Building the Inland Northwest magazine, annual publication that came out this week, and when you put it all together, there's quite a bit being built or on the books in our area.
It sure appears that way. Just even driving around, it seems like the momentum of Spokane is really going in an upward direction.
Yeah, definitely. And if you were to break it into different categories, in terms of dollar amount of volume of construction that's underway right now, the two biggest categories right now are multifamily apartments and education and schools. So with the apartments, now when I picture apartments, Ryan, I picture the standard 3-story multi-building 300-unit type complex that is common in our area and others. Mm-hmm. But really, it's quite a bit more diverse than that. What's going on in our market right now? There is that standard market rate, but you see more product on the lower end. The Catholic Charities has set the ambitious goal of eliminating homelessness. Having a unit for each individual that's on the street
within our county.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, you have these large urban projects like the old Macy's building, now called the M, where they're putting in higher end apartment buildings, and the Chronicle building, which is just behind the Spokesman Review building downtown, where they're putting in units there as well. So it's quite a diverse mix of rental properties that are coming on the market here.
It is the driving force for the low income housing, if you will. Is that solely Catholic Charities and that particular mission, or are there some other driving factors that are bringing more of that type of housing?
Well, there is that the transient housing is really at the lowest end, and there are some other low-income projects underway right now. One of the biggest is over by Spokane Falls Community College on the old. I forget exactly what that facility was, but there was. I can't remember if it was a convent, but it was some sort of Catholic complex over there, and they're putting in, I want to say, well over 100 units over there.
Okay, so that is a fairly large driving force. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end of the spectrum, as you indicated with the Macy's building called the M, I believe. When you say high end, what are we looking at most likely dollars and cents wise for a unit?
Well, I don't know that they've set prices for the units at the Macy's building yet. They may have, but I haven't seen them. I have seen the pricing on the Chronicle building, and you're looking at a 2-bedroom apartment, average size, looking at around $1,200, which is a nice mortgage payment.
Right.
That's I don't know what the average mortgage payment is in our market, but that would get you a nice house. So I think that one of the factors at that upper end of the market is a lifestyle choice of choosing to A, live downtown, and B, rent rather than own.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see how that type of product is received. The developers seem very confident that it's
an interesting point
well.
that you make, because I find that psychology or socioeconomic decision of living in the urban centers, et cetera, kind of an interesting trend, because I think there's a lot being written about it, whether it be the Spokane Business Journal or Wall Street Journal or Spokesman or otherwise. There is a lot of chatter out there about the millennials included, looking at wanting to be within walking distance to where they work, or as they say, where they work, where they play, where they socialize. It will be interesting to follow to see if that plays out. I have no reason to believe it won't, but it's a trend.
Right. And it's an interesting economic decision that a person makes to, because clearly if you're in one of those units, you have the financial wherewithal to at least make the monthly payment on a home. So it's clearly a conscious decision that members of our community are making.
Yeah, and I think, as you said just a little bit ago, the payment probably is commensurate with a reasonable mortgage payment in a normal, traditional, I should say, neighborhood. So it is definitely choosing this or that, a different lifestyle choice.
Right.
And, you know, I think at our age, Lynn, and we have similar age kids, I understand the push towards maybe the smaller yard or no yard at all if it was condo living. I think it would be tough for me to make that choice to go solely condo or apartment type living, but I definitely understand the psychology of maybe space-wise that less is more sometimes.
Right. And I don't know if we're getting too far off track, but the other
Sometimes we don't even have a track, so we don't even know if we're on it or not.
Well, the other thing that would be hard for me with kids at the age that our kids are is another cost on top of that is parking.
Absolutely.
So what are you going to do with a car? And is Spokane a community where you can live without a car? Yes, I believe it is. Can you live without a car and have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old?
I would argue that would be very difficult, because I think you probably feel like you're in the Uber business occasionally.
Absolutely.
I know I am too.
I feel like
Matter of fact, I pass you out in the Spokane Valley quite a few times. It's a bit sometimes like Groundhog's Day. I think we pass at about the same place. But then I know whether I'm on time or not if I see your car.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, what else are we seeing economically in our area right now? There is a lot going on, and I just I think I read yesterday that the consumer confidence figures appear to be higher than they've been in 15 years.
Yeah.
To me, is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you hear a lot of talk about interest rates. And
ticking upward.
Yeah, and they did go up by a quarter of a percentage point earlier this month. But it's not having any sort of chilling effect at all at this point. Which you wouldn't think it would necessarily, but
maybe not yet.
It's not something that people are wringing their hands over yet.
Right.
And if I don't have to tell you, if you look historically, they're still very low.
Yeah.
Very low. And so it's interesting. You see things clipping along, and but not a great deal of inflation yet. Yet being the key word. And interest rates going up, banks enjoying the higher net interest margin,
right?
Somewhat higher net interest margin, but it's not actually affecting people's decisions at this point. It doesn't appear.
Well, and it seems to be Spokane's always a bit of a dichotomy of whether it's following trends or as a leader or as a behind or what have you, but. What I'm seeing right now, when you mentioned condo living and some high-end condo living downtown, I think just in one of the major newspapers today, Los Angeles was picked out as being just a thriving condo market, and it really does, I think, bring us back to considering what we were reading and what was resonating in 2003, 2004, 2005.
Sure.
And so. It's interesting. So are we back there with the confidence again?
Well, I don't know if we're back there. We're well, let me say this. We may be back there with the confidence. We're not seeing some of the same behaviors at this point that we saw at that.
Some of the
time.
unhealthy borrowing and flexible
right,
standards.
And every person with a truck thinking they're either a contractor or a house flipper. You know?
Right, right. Yeah, and that was problematic.
Yeah, and so, but when you talk about housing, when you talk to home builders, they will tell you that they are feeling like we are coming to the end of a cycle. Now, that doesn't mean the same thing is going to happen that happened in 2008. 2009.
Yeah. Give me a little more on that, what they're saying there.
So they're just saying that it's for a couple years now they've been building houses at a healthy clip. I think it was Viking Homes that reported they had built over 300 houses last year.
Wow.
Now that
actually is quite a few.
Yeah, and from one company. Now that includes the Tri-Cities market as well,
Okay.
where they have a presence. So it's not just Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, but that's still a healthy clip of growth. So what they're saying is that we've seen this period of expansion, and we're likely coming to the end of a cycle. That said, at this point, there's still the demand. There's still the healthy sales and sales growth and median home price growth in the single-family market. So it's not like they're suggesting that there is a decline in activity at this point. It's just they're feeling like
they've had a pretty good run here.
Pretty good run.
And just mathematically, statistically, when you've had a run like that, it's tough to year over year go do 350 the next year. I mean, it's just mathematically difficult to do.
So the hope is when you come to the end of a run like that is that it's going to moderate, not drop off a cliff like it did in 2008, 2009. And I think that's what they're suggesting at this point.
Well, and I would hope that legislatively and banking regulations, et cetera, I think I would argue I have confidence that there were a lot of necessary changes made that hopefully will avoid some of those pitfalls. And as you said, 2008 just falling off of a cliff. So
sure.
Let's hope that we have some real positive indicators, positive upward trends, but without the drastic fluctuations. Let's take a short break and come right back. We'll be right back. Thanks, Len.
All right, thanks.
You're listening to SpokaneTalksOnline.com, Spokane and North Idaho's business and community talk station.
Kids learn about money from their parents. They know whether you tend to save up for fun purchases or pull out the credit card when temptation strikes. Since they're learning from you, talk to your kids about using their money wisely. Start by admitting your own mistakes, talking about your family budget, and discussing the importance of sharing some of your money with causes that are important to you. There are general ways to help them become wise stewards of their own money. To learn more, go to stcumoney.org.
Rob Curley, editor of the Spokesman Review.
We all just love the Zags. Traditional would be one reporter, maybe send a photographer, maybe send a columnist. Well, now on any given day, we'll have up to 4 reporters there, a columnist and 2 photographers. To me, when you have something that has the attention and love of a community, overkill just tastes right.
Online, in print, the Spokesman Review. Subscribe to the experience.
To help you be safe, Washington state law requires you to call 811 2 full business days before you plan, for example, to dig, drill, plow, pull from, or pound anything into the ground. Be prepared to provide the operator with the correct address, cross street, and the description of your work. You must mark the dig area with white paint. The operator will inform you of the utilities notified of your impending excavation. Wait for all their marks. Be safe and dig with care.
Welcome back to Business Talks. Ryan McNeese. We're here with Lynn Parrish of the Spokane Business Journal, and we've been chatting about building the Inland Northwest and the new edition coming out. So is that on newsstands right now?
Technically, as we're speaking, it's on newsstands tomorrow.
Okay,
so
well then this was appropriate timing.
I'm probably actually not supposed to have this here.
So. Well, we have cutting-edge information right now.
Yeah.
But per the building, the Inland Northwest, we've been chatting about the upward trend that we're seeing in residential and also commercial. But let's talk about education and what we're seeing in construction with education right now.
Sure. So the numbers in education are pretty mind-blowing. Not a surprise, but pretty big. It was a couple years ago that all of the school districts had bond measures and they were all successful in passing them. So if you look at the projects that are currently underway or planned over the next few years, up to, it depends on the district, but 2018 to 2020, there's $850 million worth of projects.
You know what? I've never heard it in that context.
Yeah,
I'm pretty aware of Central Valley School District and what's going on there, and all of those schools are really shaping up to look great, and most of them are opening now. But I would not have said that dollar amount.
Yeah.
That's
Once
a lot of
we tallied
construction.
it up, it was pretty. It was
substantial.
It blew us away too. Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned Central Valley School District. They're one of the bigger ones, along with Spokane Public Schools. As an aside, I walked through the new Chester Elementary.
I haven't had that opportunity.
It opens next month, middle of next month, and boy,
Is it look
something.
impressive?
Yeah.
You know,
something.
I know several years ago when I had an opportunity to go through, and I say several years ago, the new U High.
Sure.
And just blown away with what, I went to the old U High, and you look back now and think, did it look like that then? Versus really these, whether it be Central Valley or University High School or otherwise, they're just amazing structures. And I think they're really on the forefront of where we're going with education as a society. Impressive, almost small college looking at least at the high school level.
Absolutely. You know, in the Central Valley School District, that was actually a criticism you heard at one point. One that I don't share, but or a sentiment that I don't share, but was that the schools were almost too nice. You know,
I'd have a tough time agreeing with that because we have, as we said, younger kids, and that's our next generation.
Well, and already U High is busting at the seams, you know, which Central Valley School District is looking at a third high school on a future bond measure. And
is that geographically in the Liberty Lake area?
Close. It's off of Barker. So they have land around like 20th Avenue and Barker.
Okay.
So it would serve Liberty Lake, but it's not Liberty Lake proper. Yeah.
Well, when you threw out that number of the overall economic impact or dollar amount of construction, that is substantial. And yet needed. I think as a country, one of our trends of discussion has been politically is infrastructure. Well,
sure.
I think a little microcosm here in the Spokane County is the same. We have these aging schools, new generation of kids, new generation of technology.
Absolutely.
I of course would argue this is the time to be making those infrastructure upgrades.
Yeah, definitely. And if you were to look broader at when you talk about infrastructure or voter approved measures, there's a lot more than just schools. You know,
right.
We have the work going on at Riverfront Park, of course,
yep.
$65 million in altogether, at least $65 million. And then there's, and we'll get in and out of this really quick so your listeners don't drift off, but the city has these massive projects right now called combined sewer overflow tanks. $20 million each, where they're building these huge underground tanks to capture rainwater, essentially,
right.
So that it doesn't go straight into the river and overflow and cause sewage to go into the river. So, not the sexiest projects you've ever heard of,
right?
But
it's part of the overall
yeah,
system
exactly.
that we're dealing with, and important decisions that need to be made in our community.
Yeah.
Well, what else is going on? Let's talk about the U District. That's been a hot topic for quite a while now. Visually, it's extremely impressive.
It's kind of interesting because in that $850 million figure, there's not a whole lot in the U District itself that's included in that. But that said, there are three massive projects there that are imminent. The pedestrian bridge, which is around $15 million.
Let's flesh that out a little bit. Is that what's connecting the U District back over to Sprague?
East Sprague Avenue,
okay.
Yeah. And so one of the things that advocates hope to see with that, and that project was criticized quite a bit, but one of the things that we're seeing there is what advocates hope to see, which is development at each end of the pedestrian
Oh,
bridge.
it's going to massively change that into Sprague.
Right. And so at the north end of the bridge, on the U District side, you have the Jensen Bird project, which McKinstry and one of its partners has taken on to redevelop that old hardware's warehouse.
Absolutely.
Basically.
It's going to be exciting to see. I've seen some of the early renditions.
Yeah.
Could be some really neat space.
And it's hard to know when that's going to get started. They have said that they expect to start some aspect of it this year, but they've also said that it's going to be market-driven. So it'll be interesting to see when work starts. But as they've said, hopefully it'll be yet this year. But and we've all known about the Jensen Bird redevelopment for a couple years now. But at the other end, on the south end of the bridge, on just off of East Sprague, is the project. It's called the Catalyst Project, that Avista Development, the economic development arm of Avista Corp, that they're taking on, and that's a pretty exciting project.
Well, I think what's interesting about the south end, if you will, is what you're seeing in terms of regentrification already, whether the bridge is there or not. You're definitely seeing professional buildings, some manufacturing that have really regentrified their particular buildings, and it's starting to look really good down there. I mean, some early folks to the area, I think, to really clean up that area would be a Tin Roof down there, or the pizza place.
Benedito's.
Benedito's,
Yeah, sure.
that's a great location. But you wouldn't have seen that 5 years ago.
No.
I think what you're seeing is seeing that these trends and potential projects are underway, the confidence in an area starts to build, and people start putting resources into making that area look good. So I think both that south end and north end are going to be pretty impressive.
Yeah. And, the plans that they've submitted so far for the Catalyst project include education-related space, laboratory space, classrooms. And so I don't know if they have someone set up for that space already or if it's just being built speculatively. But the conceptual drawings for that show much more than what's actually been proposed so far in terms of neighboring buildings. And one thing that you wonder about with the University District in general, one thing I wonder about is when are you going to see housing? The universities have already said that that's not going to be their thing.
To put up
additional
housing.
So when are you going to see the private sector doing housing in that neighborhood? And I think that's going to be something to watch in the future.
That will be interesting. And, I don't think we can talk about the U District without throwing a plug out there for Gonzaga University in the Final Four. But I jest a bit, but I think I heard on CBS this morning that the Gonzaga University website has, since Gonzaga going to the Final Four, has received some million visits to the website. That certainly doesn't hurt the economics of a particular area and the confidence for developments moving forward.
Yeah.
The housing piece that you mentioned is interesting because in terms of having the proportional nature of square footage being built out for commercial versus educational versus residential, it will be interesting. I think you make a good point of keeping those proportionalities in balance. So
our office is in that neighborhood, so I have a little bit vested interest in it, figuratively speaking. And so it's interesting to me how you see the medical district slowly moving north in that neighborhood. So across the street from us is a physical therapy practice.
Right.
And then right across the other street was another doctor's office that opened. So it's interesting. You see that moving northward. You see the university district slowly moving southward. And so when I think about housing in that neighborhood, I think about something that can serve both students and professionals who were
that are going to be working in
the
those
healthcare
spaces.
sector. Yeah.
Well, I think that Jensen Bird building, for one, could have a little bit of that multi-purpose, hopefully. I don't know what the proportion of that is for that particular build-out.
At this point, they haven't talked about the current developers haven't talked about housing in that specific building, but it's something that's been bandied about in the past.
Okay. Let's jump just a little bit. Let's jump to the west, actually, if we can. Kendall Yards. Kendall Yards looks great. I enjoy chances to be down in that area, whether it be for business or eating out. It's just it's a really cool location. But I understand that Greenstone is moving forward with their project above the parking garage. Tell me more about that and what's going on there in the west part of town.
Sure. So, real quick, the grocery store over there is well underway. I don't know if you've been over that way, but it's right at the corner of Monroe and Summit Parkway, right at what I consider the entrance. The main
essentially the corner, if you will.
Yeah. And so it's well underway, and it'll be interesting to see that when it opens.
What is the actual grocery store?
It's independently owned, to be honest. And
not
operated.
Trader Joe's?
No, not Rose Hours, not Trader Joe's, no Yolks.
Okay.
So it'll be, but talk about demand. I mean, they've got so many housing units over there, and to be the closest grocery store is a natural. But across Summit Parkway from the grocery store and down just a short ways, it's going to be the biggest project, the biggest single project that Greenstone has taken on in that development. A couple of 6-story buildings on top of parking that will be which will overlook the gorge.
Oh, I was going to say the views from a 6-story right there would be fantastic.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. Fantastic.
It's not
Monroe Street Bridge right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Both to the southwest and the southeast. It would be gorgeous views.
Yeah,
gorgeous
Peaceful
views.
Valley right through there.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to seeing that. For some reason, I've just really found that area of town really visually appealing.
Yeah, they've really tapped into something there.
Yeah. I'm a big Spokane fan in the sense that I think what's been going on downtown, whether it be the U District or what you've seen in Kendall Yards and otherwise, I think there's been such a positive regentrification all the way up where Thomas Hammer putting in, they've been there. Is that 2nd and Pacific?
It's actually, Pacific and not Brown, but right in.
And then they've been there for some time, but they put a lot of resources into their corporate headquarters, and it looks great.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and I think we have a lot more to talk about. So, Len, that means you got to commit to coming back and chatting with us again.
I'd be happy to.
But it sounds like the vibe is good. Economically, the vibe is good in Spokane.
Yeah, it sure does.
Well, let's stick with that trend and have you come back and inform us again here soon.
Yeah, go Zags.
Thanks, Len.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.
If you know what amortization, bridge loans, and HELOCs are, well, you're pretty smart. The financial world is brimming with acronyms and other confusing terms, which can make it harder to make decisions about spending, saving, and borrowing money. If you could use an introduction, go to STCU's financial education blog at stcumoney.org. You'll find out whether you've been amortizing all along, and the experts at the credit union will translate some of the other important financial concepts, too.
The stories and photos on the pages of Nostalgia Magazine show glimpses of life in the Inland Northwest from years gone by. From home life, school days, and the workplace, you can relive a style of life that we all loved and cherished. Call today to subscribe, 443-3678, or visit us online at nostalgiamagazine.net. Nostalgia Magazine, ageless stories, ageless photos.